talk.
We're flooded with questions, legal-based questions, but we want you to call in. If you can't afford the call, let us know, and we'll call you back. Because this is the whole concept of Call-In Talk Radio. Call in and ask your question. Let us know. Drop us a message, and we'll call you back. 021-446-0567. But you can find almost anything on TikTok and social media in general nowadays, including legal advice, or should we say legal education. So instead of Dr. Chris Smith, the naked scientist who answers your science and natural history-based questions, we thought we'd explore this world of legal advice via social media. So we invite you, call in, ask your question. Got a couple. I'm serious here, folks. I'm not going to read these questions. You're going to call in so we can ask and pose these questions here to our legal eagles, Aslam, Moolla, as well as Douglas Nelson. They're from a firm called Legal Eagles. Aslam and Douglas, thanks so much for joining us. I see it's a very big trend, particularly in the US market, where lawyers go onto social media. They pose largely hypothetical questions or general questions, and then they answer that. There's been plenty of response to the American model. Are you seeing a lot to South Africans as well?
Good morning, Lester. Thank you for having us. Yes, my name is Aslam, and Doug to my right-hand side. And we're from a company called Legal Leaders. And to answer your question, I agree with you that there's been quite a big movement online when it comes to people asking questions and providing videos from lawyers in the US, etc. However, I think what differentiates us is, especially if you have a look at our YouTube channel, Lester, we're aiming more towards giving practical information that people can use quite literally to help themselves. So for instance, if you go over to our YouTube channel, we've got videos there. If someone's representing themselves in a disciplinary hearing or a CCMA case, we've got videos where basically people can help themselves by preparing their own opening statements, cross-examination questions. So whilst it is somewhat generic in nature, I think the focus and effort on our side is to make it where people can actually use that as practical information to help themselves.
Douglas, let's put a little disclaimer. This is, of course, legal education, not legal advice. This comes in the form of a consultation with your legal representative, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I'm not even a lawyer.
Yes,
I work very closely with the law firm. I run a law firm, but I am not a lawyer. Aslam is an attorney. But in my experience with the law, and my background is mainly with marketing and business development. And I found out throughout my entire life that law is always some mystery, something stored in dusty books and in cupboards somewhere that nobody knows, and old grouchy people with leather couches. And these are the people, the custodians of the law. And as I was going through businesses and as I was consulting to businesses, I found out that that is absolutely not true. The South African legal system has evolved from where that is with the new constitution into, if I can almost say, like a do-it-yourself law, where the normal person can actually get involved. The normal person can actually empower themselves. At CCMA, for instance, you can represent yourself. At small claims court, you can actually go there. It's like a whole Judge Judy thing. You can actually do this yourself. Divorces nowadays, where you don't need to pay people hundreds of thousands of rands for them to use terminology like usufruct or some other technical word. I mean, really, this is law can be open to the average Joe, and that is what our big goal is.
It's not all about the locus standi and the bona fides of the whatever legal Latin term, but we have calls coming in. Paige, good morning. How are you doing? Rocco, Charlene, I see you. But Paige, we're listening.
Hi, good morning, Lee.
So what has happened, or my question is that my partner was locked up yesterday and he was kept overnight because he had his cell phone in his hand. And they arrested him because he wouldn't give his cell phone as said as private property. He was willing to then pay the fine. However, the traffic cop then pulled the cell phone out of his hand, and then the traffic cop got violent with him. They then arrested him, and however, he is still in the cell.
Oh, wow.
They will not release him.
Okay, let's throw that straight to Aslam. There are bylaws regarding the confiscation of cell phones, and then you pay a fine to get them back. But what's your response in Page's case, Aslam?
It's always a tricky one, Lester, because every caller that calls in, there's always some background information. But in terms of the bylaws, you've got to look and see, is it a payment of the fine or imprisonment? Generally, it's either or. It's not both. So if the fine has been paid and you've got a receipt of that, then there should be a release. I wasn't too clear. I couldn't hear from the caller.
Paige is still on the line. Maybe you can clarify.
Yes. So he was still given a fine for the cell phone, and the cell phone was still confiscated from him. However, they still arrested him and took him to the Aslam police station.
If I can just interject here a little bit. When there is a fine line in law between civil law, labor law, normal commercial matters, and criminal law. So, in other words, if the police are involved, while it's nice to know your rights, and while it's very important to know these rights, if the police are involved, okay, get a lawyer. Really, there are some things where you really should get legal representation. If he's been arrested, then you really should get some legal representation to look at the matter. It is a serious offense. If we're just talking something like paying a fine, where they're coming after you for a bad debt or something along those lines, then DIY law, so to speak, is certainly a route. But on very serious matters where criminal offenses are concerned, while knowing a lot, while our platform can certainly help you know your rights, don't muck about with serious things like that, where you could go to prison or he can go to prison. Don't tata my chance.
Thanks so much for that, Paige. I suggest, on the advice of our legal leaders here, you maybe approach a lawyer. Rocco Plumstead, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Lester.
We're listening.
Yes, I was listening. Yes, thanks, man. I just wanted to ask you, I've sold a property in a sectional title block, and obviously we require the audited financials from the managing agents. The managing agents are attorneys, and for 3 months they haven't been able to provide this. Now we suspect, obviously, that they don't have audited financials. What is my route legally to try and force them to provide this?
Douglas or Aslam, you guys can pitch in?
Okay, I'll touch a bit on it, and then Doug as well. So essentially, we're going to look at the contractual arrangement here. Is there a delay in the transfer, from what I understand?
Yes, it's being delayed because there is no financials being provided.
Okay, a simple request, I'm going to say letter of demand, but that might be too strong. A simple request to the managing agent who are a firm of attorneys, to say, it's been 3 months. Where is the progress on the matter? And if that fails, you can bring something called an application to compel, which is a court action. But I think the interesting dynamic between myself and Doug is, I'll bring you the legal aspects, the application to compel, and then maybe Doug might come from a business angle and he might see it completely differently.
Doug?
Well, yeah, I kind of agree with that, because what you would want to do over here, if you are faced with a situation, these deadlocks, these log jams, okay, and I think Aslam kind of touched on it there. A letter of demand can sometimes be too harsh. It can set off red flags, and it can end up stonewalling, and it'll stop a normal negotiation from occurring. In a situation where you're there now, you're one step away from litigation, from, as Aslam says, actually bringing a motion to compel in order to get this logjam broken. One of the best routes to do it is simple negotiations. So you go through to them, and you can do it in person rather than just a phone call, or alternatively the email, but an in-person normally works. And you sit down, there's normally humans on the other side of these companies, and you say, listen guys, this is the story. It's been 3 months. What's the story here? It's not working. I don't want to have to escalate this. I don't want to have to go to the ombudsman. I don't want to have to do these. But unless you guys start moving this, it's been 3 months. Bring the human aspect into it. Try to appeal to them on that level. If it doesn't work, you have rights. And as Aslam said, a notice to compel, that is certainly something which you can bring through to. Ombudsman is another in the particular one. But try to avoid it. It's called the alternative dispute resolution models.
If I could touch on that a bit, Lester, we're finding that the courts themselves, the judiciary is coming forward and saying there is a huge backlog of cases, even prior to COVID, even prior to the pandemic, when we were forced to stay at home. And courts are now forcing parties to conduct mediation before litigation. Like, for instance, a big one is Rule 41 now of the court rules. Even for divorce matters, and even in this situation, if we rush off to court and institute proceedings, a judge might say, have you spoken to them? Have you had a discussion with them? Now, in this case, because you're dealing with attorneys, it might be fruitful just to call in and set up an appointment with them. 15, 20 minutes, meet the managing partner of the firm, someone in a senior position, and say, listen, I've been put in this situation. Your firm is handling this. Is this the way that you guys do business? Put the ball in their court and let's see what the response is.
Appreciate it, Rocco. Charlene Plumstead. Firstly, let me remind our listeners, Dr. Chris Smith is on a spot of leave, so we thought just temporarily, or maybe we'll see how this goes. A little bit of a legal half hour with some advice and education from firm Legal Leaders SA. Charlene in Mitchell's Plain, good morning.
Good morning, Lisa. I would like to know from the legal eagles, for example, if I'm invested in offshore in another country, and the proceeds or the whatever I make on my investment is already taxed in that country. So when I do withdraw my money in this country, South Africa, will it still be taxed again?
Thanks so much, Charlene. Tax law, that's something I am very, very slick with on this side. Aslam?
Okay, to be honest, Lester, it's also not really my forte, but I'm going to give it a try based on the tax module that I've done at law school. And from what we've done at law school, Lester, it says that anytime that you are bringing money into the country, so if it hits your FNB Standard Bank account, you said that it's invested offshore. And we find this a lot in divorce matters as well. Parties are going through a divorce, husband or wife has money in the Cayman Islands or wherever. Now they want to move that money into another trust so that the other spouse doesn't get to it. The reality is what the courts will do is, if that money has touched a local account, if you're going to bring that money back into South Africa, it's highly likely to be taxed. Although, of course, you must get tax advice from a specialist tax advisor who can look at your situation. But if that money is available to you to spend in South Africa, I believe the government's going to want its share.
If I can also just interject there a little bit. And again, this goes into actually dealing with the problem. And you'll find that if you actually go into the SARS office and you go there, they've got plenty of consultants, and you speak to them. There are humans on the other side there. And you tell them the story and you say, this is the situation. Those people know what the right way tax should be paid. They know what's charging too much and too little, and they will advise you on the right way to do it. You don't, well, obviously, if you've got the means to get a financial advisor, but in many cases, and this goes for legal cases as well with the clerks of the court, with CCMA, any of those things, if you physically go in, there are people who can actually help you, and you explain your situation, you explain it to them in layman's terms, and the people there will actually guide you. They will say, listen, Charlene, if you do this, you're going to end up paying the maximum tax. Rather do this and this and this and explain it. But just go in and speak to the people there. It's not necessary for you to get a third party, and it's certainly not necessary for you to somehow misstate your earnings to SARS along those lines. Go in there, speak to them, and they will genuinely steer you in the right direction. It's not necessarily this big secret, just a little bit of gumption on your side, so to speak.
I think a last caller. I think there is a level of interest from our listeners, so we'll talk to Aslam and Douglas of what we can do in maybe taking this further in a different time, different place. But first, our last call for the day. Abdul in Aslam, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I just want to ask, how can I recover my? I'm the owner of a flat, and I had a tenant there for a while, and he didn't pay me rental for about 5 months, and then he left, and he owes me like 40,000 rental and about 20,000 in damages for the property.
Gosh, housing and rental have become very big issues post-COVID. There were, of course, restrictions on evictions, restrictions of people moving. I know that the Housing Rental Tribunal has been chock-a-block full with disputes. Doug?
Well, there's a couple of levels on that. I'm glad you mentioned the Housing Tribunal. That certainly helps as well. But I just want to understand something a little bit, Abdul. Is this all in your personal name, or is this through a company that you own?
No, it's my personal flat.
Okay, excellent. So because it's in your personal name, that means that you can actually take this to small claims court. All right? Small claims court, the limit has changed recently. I think it's on 25. It's 25,000 now. So if your losses, direct losses for damages are about 20,000, you can actually take it to small claims court. It is free. You go there, you download from Department of Justice a letter of demand. On there, you would attach a statement where you explain how you reached this 20,000. Obviously, you would have your evidence. You send that through, and again, go through to the clerk of the court. These people are really helpful, and you explain the story. They'll tell you if you've got the form correct. They'll tell you where to send it through, the proof of service. We're running a bit short on time. But if it's less than 25,000 Rand, and it is in your own name, then you can actually sue these people directly. And that doesn't stop you necessarily from also going to the Housing Tribunal too for the balance. Yeah. But that is something you can do without having to incur a huge amount of legal fees. But the main thing is evidence. Evidence. Don't just thumb suck 20,000 Rand. I want to see a number that says 21,214 Rand and 18 cents, because that's the number the court wants to see, and they want to see how you got there.
Douglas, Nelson, Aslam, Moolla, they are with the firm Legal Eagles South Africa. Aslam, very quickly, Legal Leaders South Africa. Aslam, just inform us about your social media pages. Your mission is education in terms of the public and their legal rights. Where do people go to maybe just peruse some of your videos that you've already uploaded?
Thanks, Lester. So we're available, quite honestly, on all social media platforms, be it Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Just type in Legal Leaders. There's a wide variety of content. And like I mentioned in the beginning, Lester, it's all aimed at practical steps that people can use to help themselves. So if you watch any of the videos, you will be able to get some value so that you can actually represent yourself. What you've seen today with Doug and I, that's what the videos will give you.
Douglas, Nelson, Aslam, Moolla of Legal Leaders South Africa, thanks so much for joining us. It was a positive response from our listeners. If you want this to continue, different time, let us